Senators Trent Lott and Byron Dorgan called for the formation on a new National Energy Council Tuesday. The recommendation is part of a report aimed at establishing a U.S. energy strategy. The full report is expected to be released in January. It'll outline domestic developments in oil and gas production, energy security threats, and environmental challenges. This is about 45 minutes.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jason Gourmet, the president of the Bipartisan Policy Center. It is a real pleasure on behalf of the leaders of the BPC's Strategic Energy Policy Initiative to welcome you here today for the release of the initial recommendations of this effort. Broadly, the purpose of the Bipartisan Policy Center is to bring together an incredibly diverse group of folks, real experts, proud partisans, people with a lot of political engagement, and spend a couple years hammering out detailed policy recommendations that are actionable, and then collectively advocate for those policies. Consistent with this imagination, in 2011, we brought together a new energy project, chaired by the gentleman to my right. And again, it was and is a remarkably interesting group of CEOs and senior officials from energy producing and using enterprises, economists, scientists, environmental advocates, a wide range of folks. And we've had regular meetings which have been significantly engaging, I would say, to the least. These are not quiet conversations, but they've been very rich discussions. And today's release, as I said, is the first effort that we are going to share with the public, and it focuses on decision-making in the executive branch. Tomorrow is, in fact, the final negotiation of the group, where we're going to try to nail down the variety of policy recommendations that we'll be releasing early next year. And so I think I want to be clear that today we're really here to talk about the recommendations we've released and then have a broader conversation about optimism for the possibility of moving energy legislation in the next Congress. And I guess I would just close by saying, and it's been a while since I could say this, there's a lot of good news in energy policy. Having had the opportunity to give versions of this speech over the last decade, that's not usually the way these things end. But I think our group has come to believe, after quite a bit of analysis, that the incredible gains on energy efficiency, on domestic production, and reducing energy costs has essentially bought us a bit of important time when looking at our national security and environmental and economic imperatives. And we've been focused on the question of what should we do with that time. And the recommendations we offer today are, I think, a first step in hoping to try to answer that question. Now, my pleasure to introduce Margot Anderson, who is the director of the Energy Project, the BPC.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, co-chairs. I first want to give you a little bit of background to embellish a bit on what Jason has just told you. We launched this energy project in 2011 because we thought that while the U.S. is experiencing this terrific boom in oil and natural gas production, we've made good progress on renewable energy, great progress on energy efficiency. We still face an array of energy challenges that have got to be addressed in the years ahead. Our energy initiative, again led by our four co-chairs and a highly diverse energy board, is developing options to address these challenges, challenges that must be confronted during a time of unsustainable national debt and a divided Congress. This will create difficult policy choices, no doubt, and these choices are unlikely to be resolved without national leadership, which is the topic of today's release and recommendations. So as Jason mentioned, we're going to release the full recommendations in January, but today's early release is focusing on improving energy policy development, implementation, and accountability in the executive branch. We think that now is the time to release these recommendations, just as the President is starting his second term and filling out his cabinet and his policy agenda. And so having these recommendations to chew on, we think, will be a good value instead of waiting until January to release them with the rest of the full report. Specifically, the first recommendation focuses on creating a new National Energy Strategy Council charged with both developing a national energy strategy and providing coordination on all executive branch energy matters. The second recommendation requires a quadrennial energy review that implements the strategy. Together, these recommendations, which combine White House and cabinet level leadership, agency expertise, and stakeholder involvement, can help create a more inclusive, balanced, and enduring path to meet our long-term energy needs. So our chairs are going to discuss the rationale and the details behind these recommendations. We have General Jones and Bill Riley will speak about their executive branch experience and why these recommendations are warranted. We'll then have Senators Lott and Dorgan speak about crafting energy policy from the legislative perspective and how these recommendations can help that body as well. Then we'll have some time for Q&A. So we thank you for coming, and General Jones, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Margot, and good morning, everyone. And I'd like to thank you and thank my fellow co-chairs and the Bipartisan Policy Center's outstanding team for the work they've done over the last couple of years on what is arguably, I think, one of the greatest potentials that this country can achieve and realize in the next few years, and that has to do with our energy future. So, in my view, this is an important day. Few objectives are as instrumental to America's future as is energy security. Energy is the lifeblood of a thriving economy and society, and our future in energy provides the opportunity to significantly assist us in exiting our economic difficulties with jobs and new opportunities are in abundance. We need reliable, we need it to be affordable and environmentally responsible in terms of our supplies, and we can't hope to keep America prosperous and strong and the world moving forward now and in the years to come without it. I say it's an important day because I believe we find ourselves at a unique point in our history, and we find ourselves at the confluence of urgency and opportunity. And we should make no mistake about it, energy security is urgent. It's made so by a growing world's thirst for oil and hunger for electric power, by fundamental resource limitations and environmental impacts, and by its centrality to our global competitiveness in the vast markets to be won abroad by pioneering the cheaper, cleaner, and more efficient energy supplies and solutions the world not only craves but desperately needs. If you examine the National Intelligence Council's Global Trends 2025 report, you'll find the word energy is one of the most oft-repeated factors driving global security over the next 10 to 15 years. Often long lead times are required for change in the nation's energy sector. This means that achieving well-conceived long-term objectives depends on visionary near-term action. The defining feature of the 21st century is about being proactive, not reactive, and about preventing crisis and not responding to it. And so this demands a sense of urgency and collegiality among the global community where energy is concerned. For the U.S., for the United States, it's another critical challenge to our leadership responsibilities the world over. The governance proposals that we advocate are essential, if only to establish the organization that can actually produce a strategic future harnessing the sum total of our energy spectrum. And today we have within our grasp great opportunity. America is blessed with an abundance of natural resources, energy know-how, and the world's greatest innovators. If harnessed correctly, the energy sector can be a plentiful source of jobs, higher payrolls, and greater revenue for the Treasury at a time when all three are desperately needed. Matching urgency with opportunity will require the United States to be far more strategic in our thinking and our energy policy making in order to make long-term energy security a national goal. With all of the seriousness of purpose this implies, one that can only be answered by a whole of government coordination in the highest levels of public-private sector cooperation. We need this type of approach to our national energy security. Over the past 40 years, we've had lots of energy policy, but make no mistake, policy doesn't make strategy. As Margot pointed out, we've had a number of national energy plans, but nothing produced and implemented with the rigor, the seriousness, and the consistency of our national security game planning or supported by a coherent architecture that fosters the level of 21st century coordination needed to solve 21st century challenges. Our recommendations seek to bring the same levels of organization, coordination, and rigor to our national energy policy making and implementation. This is a national security issue. It calls for a reorganization and a new approach to vest the responsibilities for our energy policy writ large into the Department of Energy and specifically to the Secretary of Energy himself. In January, our President will begin a new term and we will swear in a new Congress. And there's no better time for our nation to rally to the future-defining cause of energy security, a cause that will largely determine the level of our prosperity and our national security in the years to come. Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you, Margot.
Sure.
The Bipartisan Policy Center is constructed on the quaint proposition that the most successful public policies in American life have been the result of bipartisan cooperation. This enterprise is one of those examples of a project that does that. If you look at the composition of our group, we're a very diverse group politically, in terms of profession, in terms of background, in terms of experience. And we come together now to present the first of the reports that the project will have agreed upon. Our premise really is that our energy discoveries, or at least my very personal take on this, is that our energy discoveries of recent years have created a transformational change in the U.S. energy economy with implications for industrial revitalization, national security, balance of trade, and economic development. It is an important moment, and we need to make the most of it. The nation is positioned to enter a new era of relative energy abundance, and that gives us many options we haven't previously had. I look back at my own experience, and I remember when the environment assumed salience in the early 70s, the President put together a Council on Environmental Quality, new instrument that was created by the National Environmental Policy Act, and gave it the authority to coordinate the administration's approach to the environment. Everybody wanted to play on the environment in those days. It was the environmental rally. And he gave it the authority to produce a report, which was actually required by the National Environmental Policy Act, an annual report on the quality of the nation's environment, the state of the nation's environment, and also to put together the administration's legislative program for the environment. This gave this small little three-member agency with a staff of about 50 extraordinary authority and intellectual heft at a very important time. We would very much like to see the same thing happen now with respect to energy, which has the same salience, significance, and importance, and on which I think also everybody wants to play. We notice, and there is in your materials a list of, I think, 32 companies or committees of the Congress that are involved with this. Something like 20 agencies of the federal government have significant roles in energy policy. It's time to put some things together. And I look back at my own period at EPA when we came up with the idea of recognizing energy efficiency as a way to encourage consumers to purchase equipment, and we started with computers that were much more efficient than they had been, basically by introducing the sleep function into computers. And we started out, we called it Energy Star computers, and gradually spread it to other appliances. And I still recall the degree of anxiety this caused the Energy Department, who said, this is really our business. We said, well, it's a pollution reduction effort. It has obvious implications. It was a very fast-growing area of energy use, electricity use, computers. And, but pretty soon, within a couple of years, the two agencies got together, and now together do the labeling that agrees on Energy Star and apply it to refrigerators and all sorts of other equipment as well. That's the kind of thing that I think we would like to encourage among the federal agencies, but more than anything else, give to this issue the priority, the high placement, and the significance that it calls for, and give it some unity of approach in producing this quadrennial review and then an annual report as well. I think we will have learned from a very important experience in the environment, and I think we will do the country and our energy economy a great deal of good by promoting efficiency, and more than that, promoting a much closer focus on strategy. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. And let me thank the Bipartisan Policy Center for initiating this energy project. It's been one of the more interesting and informative educational experiences I've had. The diversity of the 18-member board, which includes people from the industry, the utilities, and oil and gas, railroad, academic, labor, environmental. It's quite a group, and we've had some lively exchanges, and I think we're going to have a product that will be useful to the administration and to the Congress next year. But what we're doing today is rolling out the governance section, which has been greatly encouraged and shaped by General Jones, who has unique experience of serving at the Pentagon, in the military, and as the National Security Advisor to the President. And he made an early point that I was familiar with based on my experiences of 35 years in Congress, that we had all these different agencies and departments and people and all over the government, as well as in the Congress, that had parts of the energy package, but it never really had a way to be brought together, or hasn't recently had a way to be brought together, to take a look at what should be our energy policy